I work at an Alzheimer's care facility in Indiana with my mom. We've been there for almost 6 years, side by side, taking care of people most of the world forgets about. It's hard work, messy, emotional, sometimes heartbreaking, but it's honest. My mom, Linda, is the type of woman who remembers every resident's favorite snack, every grandchild's name, and every song that still makes them smile. The patients love her. The families love her. Even the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Landry, trust her more than anyone else. And that's exactly why Tamara hated her. Tamara came in last summer like a storm in heels, loud, opinionated, and determined to climb over anyone to reach the top. She'd worked at another nursing home before but said she left because of bad management. Turned out, she was the bad management. Within a week, she was whispering in people's ears, planting little rumors like weeds. About me? That I was sneaking out early on night shifts. About my mom? That she was stealing supplies. About herself? That she was the real backbone of the care floor. At first, I laughed it off. There's always a drama queen in every workplace, right? But it stopped being funny when those rumors started sticking. One day I got called into the office because someone claimed I'd been neglecting a resident during my shift. Another time, my mom was accused of taking home medication bottles for personal use. Both times, we proved our innocence, but the seed of doubt was there. Tamara made sure of that. What made it worse was that she did it all with that sugary voice of hers. "I'm just worried about the residents," she'd say. "You know how much I care." And the thing is, she could act like she cared. She'd put on this angelic show when the owners were around, cooing at the patients, straightening bedspreads, even humming hymns like some kind of saint. But the second no one was watching, she was cold, cruel, and careless. I caught her once snapping at Mr. Dalton, one of our sweetest residents. He'd wandered into the kitchen, confused, looking for his late wife. Instead of gently redirecting him like we're trained to do, Tamara hissed, "Go sit down, old man. You're not supposed to be in here." I saw the look on his face, blank at first, then scared. That was the first time I truly hated her. Mom told me to let it go. "People like that," she said, "they destroy themselves. You just keep doing your job." But it was hard to stay calm when Tamara seemed to be thriving off our misery. By fall, she'd managed to weasel her way into an assistant supervisor role. That gave her power, too much power. She started changing schedules, assigning herself easy shifts, and sticking Mom and me with double loads. Then she began talking about how wasteful some of the staff were, hinting again that supplies were disappearing. We didn't know it yet, but that's when she started stealing. It began small, extra gloves, cleaning wipes, soap. Then we noticed missing cash from the residents' petty funds, the money their families left for small comforts. A candy bar here, a magazine there. Suddenly, entire envelopes were missing. And every time something went wrong, guess who she pointed at? My mom. The owners started to get suspicious, not of Tamara, but of us. Mr. Landry even pulled my mom aside one evening and said, "Linda, you've always been reliable, but lately there have been concerns." I'll never forget the look on Mom's face when she came home that night, humiliated, heartbroken, and furious all at once. That's when I decided enough was enough. I started watching Tamara more closely. Not just casually, like a hawk. She'd come in early sometimes, alone, before the cameras were even turned on for the day shift. She'd leave late, saying she was finishing paperwork, but I noticed she always carried her oversized tote bag, bulging, heavy, clinking with something inside. I told Mom, and we agreed we'd catch her in the act. We didn't know how yet, but we were done being her victims. Then, one Friday evening, everything changed. Tamara came storming into the break room waving an envelope. "You two better get your stories straight," she sneered. "Because someone's been stealing from the donation fund, and management's looking real close at you, Linda." Mom just stared at her, calm but shaking slightly. "What are you talking about, Tamara?" "Oh, don't play dumb. You've been here forever. People trust you. Perfect setup, right? I could have smacked that smirk right off her face. But instead, I said, then maybe we should ask to see the footage from the office cameras. That wiped the smile off her lips, just for a second, but she quickly recovered. Don't worry, she said, the owners are already handling it. Then she strutted off like she'd already won. But what she didn't know was that I'd already spoken to one of the maintenance guys, Frank, who hated her guts. He told me he could access the security feed if I really needed to. That night, when the halls were quiet and the residents were asleep, I slipped into the back office with Frank's help and pulled the footage from the past week. What we found made my stomach twist. There she was, plain as day, in the middle of the night, unlocking the donation drawer, counting out the cash, and sliding it into her bag. Then she pulled out a folded note, scribbled something, and tucked it under the register. I paused the video, zoomed in on her handwriting. The note read, "Linda, please remember to record withdrawals properly." She'd forged my mom's name. I felt sick. Not just because she was stealing, but because she was framing the kindest woman I knew. Mom came in early the next morning, and when I showed her the footage, she went pale. "We're taking this straight to the Landrys," she said. "But first, we're going to make sure she can't talk her way out of it." And that's where our plan began. We were going to let her dig her own grave, and make sure she fell right into it. When Mom said, "We'll make sure she can't talk her way out of it," she sounded calm, but I heard the steel in her voice. That steel came from years of keeping our heads down and doing the right thing while people who cut corners got ahead. I loved that about her. She could be quiet like a country road and suddenly move like a freight train when the time came. First, we needed proof beyond the security footage. The video showed her stealing and planting the note, but videos can be argued with. You don't know the date, the angle's weird, maybe she borrowed money and put it back. We needed something that tied her to a physical trail, tangible, undeniable. Cash could be traced if you put it somewhere she couldn't explain. A ledger with her handwriting. Anything that said, in black and white, she did this. We made a 3-part plan: observe, provoke, and trap. Observe was straightforward. I spent my day shifts watching her like a hawk, but more importantly, I watched patterns. Everyone has a rhythm, Tamara had too. She liked the twilight hours when the owners were gone and the newer staff were busy charting meds. She took smoke breaks by the back door even when she didn't smoke. She liked to run errands to the front office around 2 a.m. And she loved her tote bag. Mom handled provoke. That was her specialty, gentle pressure that didn't look like pressure at all. She'd be warm with Tamara, even butterflies about trusting her, then drop a comment that would be meaningless to anyone else. "Did you see that the donation envelope was lighter?" She'd say it loud enough for Tamara to hear, then quietly leave. Tamara always took the bait. She couldn't resist the spotlight. Trap was my baby. I convinced Frank, the maintenance guy, to help with a little harmless engineering. Frank's been with the facility for 10 years, he and Mom go back. He knows where the weak spots are and how to make technical mistakes that look natural. We rigged a drawer with a simple paper trail, a stack of envelopes labeled with small amounts, some fake receipts, and a hidden pocket that would catch any envelopes slipped in and not accounted for. We labeled a few envelopes "Miscellaneous Resident Fund" and made one envelope a little different, thicker, taped inside with a business card from the Landry's own charity drive. If anything disappeared from those envelopes, it would be on us to show where they'd gone. We also worked on place and time. The donation drawer was in an office that usually locked overnight. But we found out someone at night, an overnight supervisor in training, left it unlocked. Small things add up. We leaned into the small things. A week of low-level surveillance followed. I learned the names of Tamara's little rituals, chewing on the same pen until it looked like a twig, checking her watch when someone new walked in, pretending to straighten paintings when she overheard a complaint. She was theatrical, a stage actress who thought she was untouchable because she kept rehearsing the same act for the owners. On a wet Tuesday night the plan moved forward. Mom had one late shift, I had an early one the next morning, and Frank said he'd fix a light in the front office at midnight and drop by the security room to check tapes. The cameras were on, we made sure of that. Frank had extra keys, he'd parked in a way that hid his truck from casual notice. I waited in the small break room with my coffee gone cold, the fluorescent lights humming, my phone buzzing with messages from Mom. Have faith. Be ready. Don't get clever. At 12:07 a.m. The back door clicked and Tamara came in, hat pulled low, toed heavy. She was humming to herself, that little tune she sang when she was trying to sound benign. She walked past the nurse's station like she owned the night. Then she paused at the office, glanced down the hall like someone making sure an audience was watching, and slipped inside. From the security monitor we watched her walk to the donation drawer, open it, and slide her hand inside like she'd done it 100 times. She moved fast, practiced. There was no fumbling. She reached in, palmed one thick envelope, and tucked it into her tote. Then, the thing that showed she was sloppy and arrogant, she left the drawer slightly ajar. We had our first physical hit, the envelope disappeared. But that wasn't enough. We needed the ledger, something that matched her handwriting. So we added a second phase. Over the next few nights, I left small, fake tasks on paper in places she'd find them, a checklist with a resident's name, a note about supplies, a sticky that looked like we'd forgotten to log a withdrawal. They were small, stupid, and entirely believable. Tamara reacted exactly as we hoped. She started checking more often, making unneeded trips to the office, growing bolder. Bolder is dangerous when you're stealing. Confidence makes people sloppy. She began to talk about money more, not loudly, but in little one-sided conversations. The donations have been a mess lately, she muttered into the phone one night while counting cash in the back room. I don't know how people can be so careless. She'd laugh after she hung up, like she was proud of some inside joke only she knew. We kept stacking evidence. A spool of receipt paper missing from the supply closet. A ledger page pulled from the accounting folder and tucked in the office trash, then fished out and photographed with my phone before anyone could touch it. Frank planted tiny fibers from the tote in the office drawer so if anyone ran a fiber test, there would be a link. None of it would stand alone in court, but together, it created a pattern. Then came the slip-up that changed everything. Tamara's ego was a gasoline barrel, all it took was a spark. She started to flirt with the newer nurse, Katie, obviously, in a performative way. She wanted an audience. Katie was kind and naive, the type to believe the world was basically fair. Tamara loved that kind of person, they make the best mirrors. One night Tamara confided in Katie about being careful with the books and how sometimes people take advantage of the system. Katie, horrified but inexperienced, went to the supervisor. She thought she was doing the right thing. The supervisor, a young woman named Paula who'd been promoted quick and trusted Tamara, didn't act. Or pretended not to. Tamara had already woven herself in. Katie, however, wasn't satisfied. She came to me. You should see what Tamara does at night, she whispered, eyes wide. I could see the weight of the secret on her like a coat. I didn't ask her to tell me more. She told me everything over the course of 2 shifts, the late office trips, the heavy tote, Tamara's scolding of residents who asked about their petty cash. She admitted she'd been reluctant to say anything because Tamara had been nice to her sometimes, those little kindnesses that make you doubt yourself. But she showed me a photo on her phone of an envelope with Mom's name on it, taken surreptitiously, trembling, and that was the last piece. Katie agreed to help. She'd text me when Tamara left the floor. She'd leave a drawer unlatched. The night we'd been waiting for came together like a well-rehearsed chorus. Tamara took the bait again. She came in, quick hands, heavy heart, and stole the envelopes like they were hers. She moved with the confidence of someone who felt invisible. Frank was in the office, fixing the light. I was in the security room with a spare badge Frank had given me years back, watching, documenting, fingers numb but steady. Once she left, we pounced. Frank followed her truck to the staff parking lot under the pretense of checking a light. He watched her slide the tote into the back seat of her car. She locked the doors and walked away, humming again, a satisfied smile. We didn't confront her in the parking lot. Instead, we had the restraint of patience. Tamara thought she'd gotten away with it. That was the cruelest part, watching someone bask in a victory that wasn't theirs. Mom took the evidence to Mr. Landry the next morning. She did it in the way she always had, calm, steady, and with a quiet insistence. She showed him the footage, the photos, and the ledger pages. At first, he seemed surprised. Then, something changed. His face closed. "I can't believe it," he said, running his hand over his face. "Tamara? She's always been by my side at functions." That's when the slow crumble began. Mr. Landry called the police to come in and take statements. He took the footage himself. He told Mom he would handle it properly and to let him know if anything else happened. He said all the right things. Tamara noticed the change in the air. She started to watch her back. She began doing sloppy things, leaving envelopes in her locker, getting careless with receipts, snapping at residents in a way that employees could testify to. She tried to act innocent, but unmasked people don't play the same parts well when the lights are turned up. We waited, counting the days like prayers. Waiting felt like the worst part, the part where doubt can creep in. But Mom would make tea and tell me stories about my childhood, little, grounding things, and I would feel my resolve come back. It's surprising how normal domesticity steadies you in the middle of chaos. Then, one afternoon, the police officer showed up at the facility, polite and professional, with a little notepad. He had questions about missing funds and management wanted to go over recent withdrawals and donor records. It felt surreal. You don't expect the police to come to your place of work over petty cash. But they did, and the way they asked questions told you they were listening for inconsistencies. And that was Tamara's undoing. Because when a trained ear listens for inconsistencies, lies begin to sound like lies. She started to crack. In the next part, things escalate, we force a confrontation, the theft becomes undeniable, and she makes the worst mistake of all. She tries to turn the blame outward in a way that gets her more than just fired. The police find more than petty cash, and the thing she thought she'd hidden forever begins to unravel in ways she never expected. You could feel it the moment you walked into the building, that heavy, humming silence before a storm breaks. Nobody said anything directly, but the staff moved differently. Quieter. Careful. People whispered in corners, glancing over their shoulders like they were afraid their words might echo. That's what happens when the police visit your workplace. Everyone starts thinking, who did what? Who's next? Mom and I kept to our normal routines. Bathing residents, serving breakfast, cleaning up spills, all while pretending everything was fine. But under that calm, I was electric, waiting for something to snap. Tamara, on the other hand, was unraveling fast. The day after the officers came by, she showed up late, makeup half done, hair frizzed at the ends. She didn't even look at us, just stormed past the front desk like she had somewhere important to be. I followed her with my eyes and saw her pull the office door shut behind her, locked from the inside. Mom nudged me. "Don't," she whispered. "Let her hang herself." But 10 minutes later, curiosity got the better of me. I pretended to drop off a stack of reports and peeked through the office window. She was tearing through drawers, dumping folders, flipping ledgers, scattering papers across the floor. Whatever she was looking for, it wasn't there. And then she froze. Mr. Landry was standing in the doorway. His voice was low, calm, almost fatherly. "Tamara," he said, "why don't we talk in my office?" I stepped away before she saw me, but that image, her wide eyes, her hand still inside the drawer, stuck in my mind all day. When her voice finally came over the intercom an hour later, sharp and trembling, "Linda, can you come to the office, please?" My stomach dropped. Mom looked at me. "It's time," she said softly. I followed her down the hall but stopped just short of the office door, listening through the thin wall. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear. Tamara's voice came first, high-pitched and shaky. Sir, I swear I've been framed. They've been jealous ever since I got promoted. Mom's tone was calm, steady, the same one she used when comforting confused residents. I haven't accused you of anything, Tamara. But you and I both know what's on those tapes. Those tapes are fake, she snapped. Her daughter, she's good with technology, aren't you? Maybe she doctored them. That's when I realized she was trying to pull me into it. She was panicking, reaching for anything that might stick. Mr. Landry didn't bite. Enough, he said firmly. The police will sort through it. For now, you're suspended until further notice. You can't do this, she screamed. I've given my life to this place. You've given it 6 months, he replied quietly. The door opened so suddenly that I barely had time to step back. Tamara stormed past me, face red and blotchy, eyes wild. Her tote bag slammed against her hip as she stomped down the hall. I caught a glimpse of something sticking out of it, a small spiral notebook. My instinct screamed that's important. But there wasn't time to think. 2 police officers arrived minutes later, escorted by the Landrys. They carried small evidence bags and that neutral expression that cops wear when they already suspect how a story ends. Mom and I gave our statements in the break room. We showed them the footage again, the ledger photos, and the timeline we'd been keeping for weeks. The younger officer, his badge read Harris, looked impressed. You two have been thorough, he said. Makes our job easier. Tamara, meanwhile, was pacing near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, barking into it about lawyers and false accusations. She didn't even notice the officers' approach until they asked to search her bag. She froze again. You don't have a warrant, she said, voice trembling. We do, Officer Harris replied, unfolding a paper from his pocket. Signed this morning. That was the first time I saw the real fear behind her eyes. The kind that comes when you realize the hole you've dug isn't shallow anymore. She hesitated, then slowly handed over her tote. They opened it right there at the front desk. Inside were personal items, wallet, lipstick, gum, and several unsealed envelopes, each stuffed with cash. Some still had donation slips stapled to them. At the very bottom was the small spiral notebook I'd seen earlier. Officer Harris flipped it open and scanned the pages. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Well, he said, that makes this easier. Turns out, the notebook was a handwritten log, her own private record of the withdrawals she'd been making. She'd been keeping track of what she took and how she planned to replace it once she got her tax refund. But there was more, lists of names, including the Landrys, and cryptic notes like owner keeps cash in filing cabinet and look into bonus payouts. It wasn't just petty theft anymore. It was embezzlement, and possibly blackmail. They cuffed her right there in the lobby. The residents were eating lunch in the dining hall, a few looked up as she was led out, confused but curious. To them, it probably looked like just another visitor being escorted off the premises. To us, it was justice in motion. But karma wasn't done yet. 2 days later, the Landrys called Mom and me into their office. I thought maybe they were going to thank us quietly, maybe offer an apology for doubting us. Instead, they told us something that made my blood run cold. When the police searched Tamara's apartment, they found not just cash, but copies of personal documents. The Landrys' bank information. Payroll records. Even copies of residents' IDs and insurance cards. She'd been stealing identities. Some residents' families had already reported suspicious activity in their accounts, small withdrawals, unauthorized charges. It wasn't just money she'd been after, it was leverage. The Landrys looked shaken. If you hadn't caught her, Mr. Landry said quietly, she might have taken us all down. Mom just nodded. Evil always circles back, she said softly. It never knows when to stop. After that, the facility buzzed with gossip for weeks. Everyone had an opinion, a version of the story. Some said Tamara cried during booking, others said she'd screamed at the cops until they shoved her into the cruiser. One rumor claimed she tried to blame it all on a mysterious third person who never existed. The truth, as far as I know, is simple: she went too far, and the universe finally pulled her leash. A week later, Officer Harris dropped by one last time to finalize paperwork. Before leaving, he said, "Just so you know, we found something else when we checked her accounts. There's money missing from her previous job too. They're reopening an old case." Mom exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for years. Guess she's getting what she earned. That night, I walked the halls after my shift, the lights dim and quiet, the smell of bleach soft in the air. I passed Mr. Dalton's room, the man she'd once yelled at, and found him humming to himself, smiling at a photo of his late wife. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Justice, when it finally comes, doesn't roar. It sighs. It's strange how a place can feel completely different after one person leaves. The hall smelled the same: bleach, oatmeal, and coffee, but the air felt lighter. Like somebody had opened a window that had been shut for too long. The residents laughed more. The staff talked louder. Even the old record player in the lounge seemed to play sweeter music. Mom said it best: peace is quiet, but it echoes. For the first time in months, she didn't look tired. The deep lines around her mouth softened. The spark that Tamara had tried to stomp out came back. I'd catch her singing while changing bed linens, humming while taking vitals. It was like she'd found her rhythm again. But peace never just arrives. It comes after cleanup. And the aftermath of Tamara's arrest left a mess bigger than we ever imagined. The Landrys called an emergency staff meeting the following Monday. Every employee packed into the dining hall: cooks, nurses, CNAs, janitors, even the physical therapist who only came twice a week. Everyone wanted answers. Mr. Landry stood at the front, papers in hand, looking older than I'd ever seen him. His wife, Mrs. Landry, sat beside him with a strained smile. "First," he said, "we owe two people an apology." He turned toward us. "Linda and her daughter, Emily. You both stood up when others stayed silent. You protected this facility, our residents, and our reputation. We're deeply grateful." The room broke into applause. I'm not talking polite clapping, I mean real, emotional, heart-in-the-throat applause. People stood up. Some whistled. Mom's face turned pink, but she smiled, that quiet kind of smile that said, "I didn't do it for the praise." Then came the ugly truth. Tamara hadn't just stolen from the donation fund. She'd been rerouting petty cash meant for medical supplies to an account in her own name. She'd forged requisition forms, altered invoices, and even used the facility's tax ID for her personal purchases. The police estimated she'd taken over $12,000 in total. But the real damage wasn't financial, it was emotional. She'd made good people doubt themselves. She'd poisoned the trust in that place. She had charm, Mr. Landry said, shaking his head. That's the danger. Evil rarely looks like evil until you look close. The facility brought in auditors and lawyers, trying to clean the records. The rest of us worked double shifts to keep things running smoothly during the chaos. Mom and I didn't complain. We'd fought too hard to see it fall apart now. A few weeks later, we heard that Tamara had taken a plea deal. Fraud, theft, and falsifying records. 3 felony charges. She'd be serving time, real time. The Landrys decided to make a statement to the local news, not for drama, but to protect other facilities. "We want to warn other care homes," Mr. Landry said on camera. "Background checks don't always tell you who someone is. Character does." They didn't name us directly in the segment, but everyone in town knew who'd exposed her. I couldn't even get through the grocery store without someone stopping me to say, "You're the one who caught that woman, right? Or God bless you and your mother." Mom just smiled and said, "We didn't catch her. She caught herself." Still, it felt good. After being accused, doubted, and whispered about for so long, hearing the truth echo back felt like rain after a drought. The Landrys offered Mom a promotion, head of resident care. She hesitated at first, but I nudged her. "You've earned it, Mom. And besides, you already do the work." She accepted. For me, things changed too. Mr. Landry pulled me aside one morning and said, "I want you to head up our new compliance program, cameras, audits, safety checks. You've got an eye for the details people miss." I laughed. Guess all that watching finally paid off. He smiled. Sometimes, the quiet ones see the most. The next few months were peaceful. The holidays came, and the residents' families donated more than ever. Everyone wanted to show appreciation for the staff who'd protected their loved ones. The dining room tree was buried under gifts and cards. But the most unexpected thing happened in February. A woman in a red coat showed up one afternoon asking for Linda. She introduced herself as Detective Rowe, one of the investigators from Tamara's case. Mom led her to the break room, where the detective handed her a manila envelope. Inside was a check, a restitution payment order from the court. Tamara had agreed to pay back every cent she stole from the donation fund, and since Mom and I were listed as the primary whistleblowers, the Landrys had requested the first reimbursement be issued in our names. The amount wasn't huge, a few $1,000s, but that wasn't the point. It was acknowledgement. Proof on paper that doing the right thing mattered. When the detective left, Mom looked down at the check, then at me. "What should we do with it?" she asked. "Something good," I said. "We used it to start a small project in the residence lounge, a memory garden. Raised flower beds, a few bird feeders, and a plaque that read, 'In honor of the ones who remember love, even when they forget everything else.' Every spring since then, the garden blooms wild and bright. The residents love it. Families sit there during visits. And every time I walk by, I remember that night in the security room, how scared I was, how determined Mom looked, how one cruel woman tried to destroy us and failed. Tamara thought she was untouchable. She thought kindness was weakness. But kindness, when pushed far enough, becomes something powerful. Something that fights back. Mom says evil always circles back to where it came from. I think she's right. Because sometimes, justice doesn't need to chase you. It just waits for you to trip on your own lies. When people say karma's slow but sure, they don't mention that sometimes it arrives with flashing lights and a courtroom echoing with every secret you ever tried to bury. That's how it was for Tamara. Months after her arrest, the trial date was set for early summer. By then, the entire county had heard the story: care facility employee accused of stealing from residents. The local paper ran it for 3 weeks straight, each update more shocking than the last. Every time new details came out, it felt like watching a curtain lift a little higher to reveal what she'd really been hiding. Turns out, Tamara's darkness didn't start at our facility. It followed her. Detective Rowe, the same woman who'd delivered the restitution check, came back one afternoon to update the Landrys. She shared that while investigating, they'd found a trail of smaller thefts at Tamara's previous nursing home. Nothing was ever proven because she'd quit right before audits began. A few records had gone missing. Convenient, right? But the real twist came when they searched her home office. Inside her bedroom closet, detectives found a box filled with stolen patient information, IDs, social security cards, even photos of elderly residents she'd helped. Some of those people had already passed away. Others had families who were just now learning that their loved one's identity had been used to open credit lines and take out loans. It was evil with paperwork. When that evidence surfaced, the story exploded. Reporters started parking outside the facility gates, trying to get statements. Mr. Landry refused interviews, saying, "This isn't entertainment. This is about trust." But the truth was out, and people couldn't look away. The woman who'd pretended to be a caregiver turned out to be a con artist in scrubs. The day of the trial, Mom and I were called to testify. We both wore plain blue blouses, nothing fancy, but we stood side by side like we always had. I remember sitting on that wooden bench, hands sweating, heart pounding in my throat as Tamara walked in wearing her county-issued jumpsuit. Her hair was dull now, roots grown out, eyes hollow. The confidence she'd once carried like perfume was gone. She didn't look like the woman who used to strut through our hallways. She looked small, like all her lies had finally collapsed inward. The prosecutor started with the theft charges, showing photos of the envelopes, ledgers, and the surveillance footage we'd collected. The jury leaned forward. Then came testimony from her old employers, a director from the previous care home and a bank investigator who traced her fraudulent purchases. They painted a picture of a woman who'd been running the same scheme for years, move to a new facility, earn quick trust, handle finances, then drain small amounts from multiple accounts so no one would notice right away. When suspicion rose, she'd leave. Always one step ahead. Until us. When it was Mom's turn to testify, she was calm. Graceful. She told the story from start to finish, the rumors, the accusations, the night we caught Tamara red-handed. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear her voice echo. Tamara tried to interrupt once, shouting, "They framed me." The judge cut her off with a sharp, "Ms. Kelly, you will remain silent unless addressed." The prosecutor asked Mom why she didn't confront Tamara sooner. Mom looked at the jury and said, "Because evil loves attention." I wanted the truth to speak louder than anger. I'll never forget that line. You could feel it land like a hammer. When I took the stand, I explained the surveillance footage, the setup, the cooperation with the maintenance guy. I expected the defense attorney to try to make me look naive or vindictive, but instead, he barely asked questions. Maybe he saw what everyone else saw, a woman who'd been patient, not vengeful. By the end of the third day, the evidence was overwhelming. Fraud. Identity theft. Elder abuse. Embezzlement. She faced 5 charges in total, 3 felonies. Her lawyer tried for a plea deal again, but the DA refused. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. When the judge read the verdict, Tamara didn't cry. She just stared at the floor like she couldn't believe the story was about her. Then, as deputies led her away, she turned her head and found us in the crowd. For the briefest second, our eyes met. There was no apology. Just anger, the kind of deep, brittle rage that comes from someone who still believes she's the victim. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. Probably another lie. The sentence came a week later, 4 years in state prison with mandatory restitution to every family affected. The judge said her crimes showed a deliberate exploitation of trust and vulnerability. I thought that was too kind. She didn't just exploit trust, she fed on it. But prison time was enough for me. After the trial, reporters swarmed outside the courthouse. I didn't talk to them, but Mom said one thing when asked what she learned from all of it. If you build your life on lies, don't be surprised when it caves in. Truth doesn't need to fight, it just waits for you to crumble. That quote ended up in the paper the next morning. The headline read, "Justice served at local care home, mother and daughter expose fraudster." For weeks, letters poured in from other caregivers and nurses, people who'd faced bullies, liars, and manipulators at work but hadn't known how to fight back. One woman wrote, "Your story reminded me that good people can win too." Mom kept every letter in a little box under the coffee table. As for the facility, things changed for the better. We got new policies, stronger safeguards, and a reputation for integrity. Families began choosing our home over others because they knew we protected our residents, and each other. One afternoon, months later, Officer Harris stopped by again on his rounds. He handed Mom a sealed envelope and said, "Final update. She's been transferred to the state facility. No parole hearing for at least 3 years." Mom smiled faintly. "Guess the world got a little quieter." He nodded. "You two did good work." When he left, Mom turned to me and said, "It's done. But remember, revenge doesn't mean hatred. It just means setting things right." She was right. We didn't destroy Tamara. She destroyed herself. We just held up a mirror. The summer after the trial, the world finally felt still again. Our care facility sat tucked behind rows of maple trees, and that summer, the light filtered through their leaves like honey. Birds nested near the windows, and in the evenings, you could smell fresh-cut grass and the faint sweetness of lilies from the garden Mom and I built, our little memory garden. That place became more than we ever imagined. At first, it was just a few planters, a bird bath, and the plaque we'd bought with Tamara's restitution money. But the residents loved it so much that the Landrys expanded it. Volunteers came on weekends. Families brought seedlings and wind chimes. A local artist painted a mural on the back wall, a sunrise over wildflowers, and underneath it, in soft lettering, he wrote, "Love remembers even when memory fades." Every time I walk past that mural, I think about what we went through, the lies, the fear, the long nights of doubt. And I think about how it all ended here, in a place that grew from something ugly into something living. Mom says the garden healed her. She spends her breaks there, reading to residents or pruning the roses she planted in the corner. There's one bush she calls Evelyn's Rose, named after a patient who passed away peacefully last winter. Every spring, that bush blooms brighter than the rest. Sometimes I sit beside her on the bench we built and just listen to the wind rustle through the flowers. The world sounds softer now, like the anger has finally gone out of it. It took me a long time to understand what we'd actually done. At first, I thought our revenge was catching Tamara, exposing her lies, making her pay. But over time, I realized it wasn't revenge that saved us, it was courage. Revenge only started the fire. Courage kept us warm after it burned out. Justice didn't arrive in one big explosion, it came in waves. It came when Mr. Dalton smiled again without fear. When the Landrys started trusting their staff. When the families stopped asking about rumors and started saying thank you. It came when people believed in us again. A few months after Tamara's sentencing, we got a letter from the district attorney's office. It said the case had helped uncover a small ring of healthcare fraud across 2 neighboring counties, a few people who'd been quietly taking advantage of residents, same pattern, same methods. Tamara's case had opened their eyes. Because of the evidence we helped provide, 3 more arrests were made. When Mom read that letter, she didn't cheer or gloat. She just nodded slowly and said, "Good. Maybe that'll make a few people sleep better at night." She framed the letter and hung it near the nurse's station, next to a photo of the garden. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. As for me, I got promoted to head of compliance later that year. My job is to make sure nothing like that ever happens again, not here, not under my watch. I built new systems, better checks, stronger accountability. And I train new hires myself, always ending orientation the same way. We're not just caregivers. We're protectors. The difference between kindness and justice is that kindness asks, "How can I help?" and justice asks, "How can I make it right?" We need both. Every time I say it, I see Mom smiling in the back of my mind. We never saw Tamara again. She's just a name in an old court file now, a ghost in the system. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad for her, if I ever wonder how she ended up like that. I tell them the truth, I don't hate her. I pity her. Because she could have had what we have, purpose, respect, a sense of belonging, but she chose deceit instead. Evil always circles back. That's what Mom says. And maybe that's why our garden blooms the way it does, wild, untamed, beautiful. Like the earth itself reclaiming what darkness tried to steal. On the first anniversary of Tamara's arrest, Mom and I came in early before our shift. The sun was just rising, turning the sky a pale orange. She brought a thermos of coffee and 2 cups. We sat on the bench, sipping in silence, listening to the robins waking up. Then she looked at me and said, "You know, Emily, I think forgiveness is just another kind of freedom." I frowned. "You forgave her?" Mom smiled faintly. "Not for her sake. For mine." And I understood. Holding on to anger keeps you in the same room as the person who hurt you. Letting go doesn't erase the past, it just opens the door so you can leave it behind. That morning, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The garden smelled like lavender and dew. Somewhere inside, I felt the last trace of bitterness fade. Tamara's name, her lies, her cruelty, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was the laughter echoing down the hall, the people we cared for, and the peace we'd earned. Justice had come full circle. And as the sun rose higher, I realized something I'll never forget. Sometimes revenge doesn't destroy your enemy. Sometimes it redeems you. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.